Welcome back to Squawk Box. This morning, the Anti-Defamation League out with a new report showing a spike in anti-Semitic incidents in 2024. The ADL's data showing that this is the fourth year in a row in which these events have surged, breaking a previous all-time high. Joining us right now, Anti-Defamation League CEO and National Director Jonathan Greenblatt. He was recently named to Time Magazine's 100 most influential people in 2025. By the way, does that mean that means you're really influential in 2024?
Yeah, I don't know what it says about what my future prospects are.
Let me ask you this.
From being on Squawk Box so much?
Yeah, the Squawk was in the write-up.
Let me ask you this. The data you have that says that anti-Semitism continued to be on the rise in 2024, do you think that was there any shift in terms of if you looked over that 12-month period? Yeah. I'm praying you're going to tell me that the last couple of months of the year, it got better.
Well, look, I think it's certainly fair to say that the data tells us that anti-Semitism is a national emergency. 20% of the incidents we saw last year happened on college campuses, and things were certainly worse on the campuses in the first half of 24 versus the second half. But look, if you're one of the 250 some odd people who were assaulted, if you were at one of the institutions, 2,600 some odd institutions and homes, businesses were vandalized. There are more than 6,500 cases of harassment. And behind every one of those statistics is a story. There's a grandmother who gets yelled at, in the grocery store. There's a student who gets their desk vandalized, in a middle school. There's a college student who's prevented from walking across the quad simply because they're a Zionist. It's all crazy.
Okay, so now we got to go to the news of the day.
Okay.
Tell me what you think about Harvard. Tell me what you think about the Trump administration's letter to them and the reaction from the university.
Look, the reality is there are deep systemic problems, not just at Harvard, but at all of these institutions. And it's rampant in the faculty lounge. It's apparent, like in the Harvard Yard. You can read it in the Crimson.
So do you support what the Trump administration has done and the way they're doing it?
I am really glad that the Trump administration is leaning in and holding the perpetrators accountable. Now, the question becomes, how do you do it in a way that is strategic and addresses the systemic issues and not sort of detrimental to the whole enterprise of higher education? That's what we've got to do.
And what do you think about that?
Right.
Well, no, you have to make, I'm saying you're either for this or you're against it. We can get into the nuances of which parts you are, but just, I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, look, I think it's complicated, and at ADL we focus on the nuance, to be frank. But make no mistake, it is a good thing that President Trump is leaning in. It is a good thing that the people who lie on their student visas or do egregious conduct to held accountable. Let's note one thing, Andrew, right here and right now. For 18 months, we could not get these university presidents to move effectively enough. That's why I released our report card. Right. Suddenly, when the Trump administration threatened to pull the funds, they all moved.
Well, that's the interesting part, because I agree with you on a lot of what you just said. 100%, if you're not following the rules of your visa, you shouldn't have a visa. It's a privilege to be here. I'd like to see change at these universities. I do think that the hiring, the way they go about it, I do think that the idea that you have tenure for forever is part of the problem on these things. But I don't want to see scientific funds pulled as a...
I don't either. I don't want to see life-saving research stopped.
Right.
I don't want to see people in lab coats, their work ended because of the lunatics on the humanities side.
Well, Can I ask you a question? Go back to whether Harvard ought to realize that if your entire environment is built around hiring and promoting a certain viewpoint, if you can't be a conservative and be hired there, if you have to be woke, and it's just from the ground up, that's all you ever see, is it... See, my problem is that the Trump administration might get shut down in court. They may not be able to do it this way, but it breeds. It's like almost a breeding ground for how this happens.
There is no question we need viewpoint diversity on these campuses, in the faculty lounge and in the classroom.
When the president says, we're going to, I don't mean the president of Harvard says, I'm going to push back, I'm going to fight, and everybody goes, oh, God, thank God Harvard's fighting so that anti-Semitism can be...
But can I just want to...
But do you know what I mean? Who's the enemy?
Who's the enemy
that they're fighting against?
The enemy is, in this instance, that the overreach of the approach, the way the government has gone about this, and I'm Jewish, you know my views about this, I'll say it over and over again, We need to eliminate violence. We need to eliminate intimidation.
And you might need to start
and disruption of school.
You might need to start.
That's the 1, 2, and 3.
Cause.
So everything else, the idea.
If the courts don't stand for it, it's
the idea.
Then it doesn't work.
Right.
So but
leaning in, even if you're going to lose. Lena Khan leaned in for 2 years.
And I don't think Lena Khan was effective.
Can I say something? Your operation, your organization is a 501c3.
Of course
correct?
we are.
Okay. If I told you that this president didn't like you for whatever reason and said, you know what, screw you. By the way, you took some PPE money, which you did, so you're on the government dole. I am actually taking away your tax-exempt status because I think actually you're a political operation. And by the way, I will tell you personally, I think you're a political operation. I think you are. Should you get tax-deductible status? No, you shouldn't.
Well, wait a second.
Now let's get into a whole debate about who should get what. I'm just saying to you that once you go down this road, it is a very, very complicated place. And I think you can do tremendous damage, not only to the education system, but to philanthropy, to the way we all operate as a country.
Yep. So look, there's a lot to unpack in that. So number one, 501c3 organizations can't engage in partisan political activities. So we're involved in the public.
I understand, but you know what?
Democrats.
By the way, and that's what Harvard would say. Okay, right. Harvard would say they're not a political operation.
Correct.
But guess what? Guess what? The president's decided it is. Okay? And what I'm saying is, if the president decided that you were a political operation, I would say, by the way, I think you are a political operation, just to be 100% totally blunt about what you are. I don't believe that it's a total both sides all the time. Changes, however, whatever's going on. My point is, I don't think that you want a president or an administration to be able to decide that you are political or not political because they have a view.
It's going to go through the court system.
But wait a second.
They're not going to be able to
Harvard has an obligation to protect the civil rights of their Jewish students. Harvard and Columbia,
100%,
which they failed to do effectively.
100%.
And Jonathan, you were in favor of the administration pulling funds and threatening with funds. You wanted them to use it. It is a rightfully rare and serious step. And what I want is them to hear the corrective things you need to do. They correct it, and then the funds get reinstalled.
Right, but can I say, I want you to scream from the rooftops. I do. I think you should. I think politicians should scream from the rooftops. I think donors should pull their money. All of those things. That's the free market. I think once you have the government deciding what is happening, and it's not really the government. In this case, it's an executive order from one person or an administration. That's when it gets very complicated.
But Andrew, it's going to go through the court system. It's not going to be allowed to not go through.
Well, we'll see.
Well, here's the thing. It will go through the courts, but that will take a long time. It's expensive. It's complicated. It's going to make it very difficult for Harvard to operate the way they have in the past.
But it is going to go through the court system.
They got $55 billion in their endowment. We're $37 trillion in debt. Why do taxpayers need to fund an institution that's doing such egregious things in other respects?
Look, again, we come back to the government has the right to say, we're going to give you money, but you have certain obligations.
Exactly.
Title VI obligates them to protect the Jewish students. But I will just say, Joe, like life-saving research, like breakthrough innovation, our higher education system is the envy of the world.
It is.
Economic innovation.
It's 30 times what it was, what we fund, and that's fine. But they have $55 billion. What is that for? If they had a shortfall for 6 months, they can't cover that while they try and get their act together on these other.
Look, they ought to be able to cover it for sure. There's no question.
And then there's other people that say there's other universities that can do research. Obviously, I mean, I did research. Some of it's good, some of it's not so good. Some of it's throwing crap against the wall. It is, and they all get funded. Some of it's good, but there are great universities that if I'm not saying that the government can pick who's going to do it, but Stanford, Caltech.
Look, but here's the point. The point is, if you want to have a conversation about taking money away from universities across the board, that makes a lot of sense.
We don't need to take it away if they get in line. If they do,
but the idea that somehow
they change their evil ways, baby.
But hopefully, I don't know if you think Harvard's not providing the service that they say they're providing. The U.S. government gives a lot of money to SpaceX because hopefully it provides a service to the U.S. government, and they don't give as much money to Blue Origin because the product is not as good yet, okay? So that's what that product is. If you said to me, I'm going to give the money to Harvard or I give it to a community college, the reason you'd give it to Harvard is because right now it's providing a better product in terms of the research and development that's hopefully coming out of it, that's hopefully helping America and ultimately the taxpayers in the country.
Do you think it's okay if they really do allow and actually favor, applicants that are radically extreme, anti-Semitic. I mean, that seems to be the people that get first. And there are other people that are totally excluded.
First of all, you're suggesting somehow the entire university, every single person is anti-Semitic. Have you been there? It's not. That's not what we're talking about.
I went to school there.
You're also talking about the humanities versus the science.
Again, I think the reality is there are real questions how again, we've seen the Jewish population plummet in these schools.
The culture of the
university. We need
university.
to look at the culture.
Something went wrong in the last 50. Something went wrong in the last 50 years.
For sure. And again, Becky, you mentioned the tenure issue.
Yeah,
like, if you are a radical, like harassing your own students, I think there's real questions with the tenure system. But it can't be abused, and that's what we're talking about here.
Right.
We need due process. We need a transparent way that we go about doing this. And then, again, that's what makes sense.
Go get hired at Harvard with a Make America Great Again hat. Not happening.
Yeah, there is a problem when you can wear hide your identity behind a keffiyeh, walk across the quad, but you can't wear a red kind of
You can
MAGA
go in
hat.
with a T-shirt that says "Death to the Jews," probably, and get tenure. But you can't go in there and misgender someone. It's messed up.
I hope that that's not the case.
It is. It is. It is. It is. It is.
Again,
lean in. So what? So I still don't know where you stand. So you like this?
I like it. I want it to be done the right way. And if it's done the wrong way, it creates a terrible precedent.
And all I'm suggesting is that it could be done the right way, and it's being done the wrong way.
What way would
That's
you
where
do
I
it?
land.
What way would you do it to get real action? To really, because
you want to know? I think you could pull all of the money with a very narrow letter that says you need to show us that you are eliminating anti-Semitism in the context of violence, in the context of intimidation, and the context of disruption of school.
You're not going into the root cause. That's like treating the
second you say
that you're the symptoms of cancer without actually going in.
To get to those things, the university is going to have to do all sorts of things. However, the letter goes much farther than that. The letter says that they're going to audit how they're hiring, how they're bringing kids into school. They're going to take that data, by the way. All that information is going to go back to the government. I mean, there's a whole lot of things.
Jonathan.
By the way, on the visa thing, just for 1 second, who do you think should be responsible for visas? It's called the State Department.
Yeah.
Like, why are we sitting here I mean, I'm not saying Harvard's great, but I'm saying judging these people, who's letting these kids into the country? The State Department.
And the State Department's pulling, and they are. They're pulling some of these visas.
It's not Rubio. Call Anthony Blinken. Anthony.
Jonathan, the students at Harvard who were suspended last year and didn't get their degrees, didn't get to graduate because of their activities that were seen as anti-Semitic, eventually those degrees were given back. How do you feel about that?
It's a problem. So again, if there's no accountability, there's no deterrence. If there's no deterrence, this doesn't stop. That's why Andrew's right. Like, you can be smart and sharp and hold them accountable and get them to change. But if we're too broad brush, all I'm saying is our university system, Harvard, is the envy of the planet. They generate economic prosperity, important scientific breakthroughs. I don't want to gum that up. And yet, I want the rights of Jewish students treated like everybody else. It's just about equal treatment. That shouldn't be too much.
I agree with you.
Yeah, watching those,
amen to that.
Watching those three presidents dodge those questions.
Yeah,
I mean,
it was a shameful moment for all of us.
It just makes you wonder about whether how much is hyped.
We are way over time, but we want to thank you for the debate and the conversation.
I appreciate you.
It's an important one. Normally.